Hello and welcome to Disc Golf Daily. I'm joined by Mahmoud Bahrani, the guy that produces the shows that we watch live on DGN every weekend the Pro Tour is broadcasting. Mahmoud, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Steve. I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
I would love to know, what does it take for a DGN broadcast to happen? You've got two broadcasts. You got the women in the morning, you've got the men in the afternoon, 1 to 2 hours between when the camera operators get to eat lunch. I have no idea what happens behind the scenes. And I'd like to know, like, we just had Worlds. What
Right.
did a day in the life of Mahmoud look like during Worlds?
Sure. Yeah. So, um, we our call time basically just means like when is everyone supposed to be on heads, and so we can test everything. Our call time is usually 2 hours before the broadcast starts. So, for example, World's broadcast start was 9, so 9 Eastern, so our call time was 7 Eastern. That's actually pretty tight as far as TV goes. But you know, we also have to do a men's show in the afternoon, and we also are doing this for 3 or 4 or 5 days, whatever. So, I would say 2 hours is tight as far as TV goes, but we're pretty efficient at our checks at this point. So at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, in my case, in the case of, our director, Ian Lunger, it's 4 o'clock for him because he's out on the West Coast. So he's getting up really early. We're on heads, and we are, we have a checklist. We go through all of our, make sure all the technology is working, make sure that our cameras, one of the very important things that we do is we check that all the camera audio is level across cameras. So like if we're on cameras 1, 2, and 3, and we go to cameras 4 and 5, it sounds the same. Like
Yeah.
it's not like it doesn't get super loud when we go to cameras 4 and 5. We check that all the live views are transmitting and working. I go through with our graphics operator and our AD, and we make sure that we have all the assets prepared and everything's ready to go. We check that our replay channels are working. That takes about an hour or so. And then we check that all our special activations for that week are prepped, that we all know what we're doing. We'll rehearse certain things like,
I want to interrupt
yeah,
you.
sorry,
A
please.
special activation. What is
So,
a special activation?
so for example, the Nakwa, the Powered by Nakwa replay,
Okay.
or, the birdie zone is a great example. Well, that's something where I want to see it. I want to know that it looks the way I'm expecting it to look. The first time we show it on the broadcast is never the first time we're seeing it. So,
Okay.
um, and a lot of these we do week in, week out. So, it doesn't take very long to check them, but it's still important that we do. We just check that all the buttons are working. Um, and then the talent are, the commentators, the talent get on an hour before. So now we have to we basically do all the checks again when the talent are on, and we go through the the rundown and say, hey, off the top, you're going to see Evelina Salonen arriving, and then we're going to go to this highlight package of Evelina playing really well at New London, and we're going to say, hey, she played really well at New London, but she played really well at New London. She's even better at Ivy Hill. So does that mean that she has the advantage? And we'll have that discussion, and that kind of sets things up for the viewers, so when we get into the broadcast, it's not just like there's some context behind what they're watching.
So
And
your
yeah,
first call starts at 7
yes,
Eastern
yeah,
and
7 Eastern, yeah.
4, obviously 4 Pacific,
Mhm.
assuming time zones are still working. And Ian is on the West Coast.
Correct,
So
yeah.
I'm assuming you're waking up between 5 and 6.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I get up usually, I'm an early riser, so I get up around 5-ish. I try to do something physical, whether it's like go for a run, go for a walk, just walk around, like just do anything to get fresh air in my system. Then I'll usually have like a decent sized breakfast just to get my body woken up. And I don't drink coffee, so like that's kind of how I wake up. And then yeah, once you're going, like it's so fast paced that like you are certainly awake in between the hours of 9 and 1 whenever the show happens. So, or the broadcast. So from 9 to 1 we're broadcasting. Um, Now as soon as the cameras are off, they're clear, and They go, relax. They go get their lunches. Um, as soon as we're clear, now our replay operator, Nick Markey, he's fantastic. He actually has to spend, just so folks understand what's going on, Nick Markey sticks on probably another 10, 15 minutes to export what in like the broadcasting world would be called like our melt. That's basically just like the clean, by clean I mean no graphics, the clean versions of all the shots. So like for example, if Evelina, let's just use, I don't know, Evelina throws in on hole two, whatever, he'll export that clip, that shot from every camera that we got it from, uh, without graphics. So then if someone else wants to use that clip, it's as easy as us sharing it with
Oh,
them.
very good.
Yeah, so Marky probably in a given broadcast will export somewhere between 50 and 70 highlights. That's everything from a big putt to a great drive. And Marky's really excellent at doing that. It's a very hard thing to learn. Gary Obenberger, who was a replay operator before, did a great job teaching Marky how to do that. Now Marky's in a position where he's expert level at it. Having a great melt is really important. So,
So Mahmoud, you mentioned they're downloading these clips, so and they're clean. So you said so anybody else can use them.
correct.
Is this, for example, if James Conrad throws in at Pro Worlds
Right.
and I'm MVP and I say, hey, I would like to use that clip. Is
That's a
MVP your type of client there?
it is a perfect example. That's a perfect example, and that's exactly what we do. Uh, like if Innova or anybody Discraft wants to license those clips, like a lot of them are partners of the tour,
Yeah.
right? So like that's part of being a partner of the tour is we don't have to go through that. It's just like that's part of the deal is you get these clips, you get access to
Oh,
them.
so if I'm a
So
partner of the tour, let's pretend I'm a manufacturer. I
yes.
become a partner of the tour, and then one of the things is at the end of each event, I get a package
Well,
with.
you could. It depends. Like, you get a certain amount of credits. Like, this is where you have to talk to Sean Jack, who's our VP of partnerships.
Okay, okay,
But you get a certain amount of credits where you can use them to, like, especially if your player wins, right? That's
yeah.
obviously like something you want to celebrate as a manufacturer. So, uh, yeah, that's huge for everybody. I mean, it's also good for us because we then our my we have excellent production assistants Connor and Blake. I can't pronounce Connor's last name, Connor Denau. I'm probably getting it wrong. And Blake Bridges. They do a fantastic job of then turning around those clips for the next day. So, for example, we didn't get to use it, but Luke Taylor on during round four threw in twice. He threw in on hole 14. He had an incredible throw in, and then on hole 15 he had an even better throw in. So those two clips, they put it into one clip that we could have used on Sunday, but we didn't end up doing it because 14 was also where Nicholas had that roll away.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have made sense to then play the. So like sometimes a lot of this stuff is context sensitive. But yeah, so after the hour break, it's usually somewhere in between 45 minutes and an hour and a half. Sometimes there's no break. Sometimes it's 2 hours. It just depends on the course. It depends on a lot of circumstances. Is there a backup? Is there weather? Whatever. Blah 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 blah. We get back in the chair. We try and get back in the chair 45 minutes before the boys show, and then we do the same song and dance. We go through all our checks. We show everything to the boys commentators because usually it switches out.
Yep.
And we prep for that show. Then we do that show, which is usually from let's say 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock Eastern. And then thankfully everybody else gets to sign off. I wouldn't want them to be on any longer. Marky again has another 10 to 15 minutes where he's exporting clips. And then that's where that's where I like my job starts essentially. That's where I consider my job starting. Is when
Oh, wait a
everything's
minute.
done.
Wait a minute. You said from 9 to 1 the show is live, and I
Correct.
introduced you as the producer.
Correct.
It feels like while the show's live, the producer would be doing something.
Well, that's true. Yeah, during the show, big, and I hate calling it a show. During the broadcast, uh, the my I have several roles. All of us wear several hats, right?
Yeah.
It's a 5-person control room. I challenge anybody to go find a production like ours that has that has the same number of people. It's but anyway, that's I digress there. So for example, Ian Lunger, our director, is also our technical director. In a traditional show, there's a director, and then there's a separate person who's literally taking care of the technical elements of it, and the director's just directing. Now in our show, they do both. Me, I'm the producer. The producer's focus is usually keeping everything, uh, making it feel like a consistent narrative, making it feel like it like whenever you feel like the broadcast. Oh, sorry, go ahead. You're gonna ask a
I was
question.
just gonna say you're basically making sure we're telling one story and
Yeah,
keeping the arc going.
yeah, kind of, and just being able to adapt with what's going on the on the screen, you know. So, like for example, if someone birdies 3 holes in a row, we want to let people know, hey, they just birdied 3 holes in a row. Maybe here's like a little highlight package, or here's their scorecard, just to draw attention to the fact that they birdied three in a row. Maybe you weren't paying attention, or just trying to pick up on things that just introducing that so that the viewer kind of takes something away from it. If it, my judgment for if we're doing well is if it feels like fast, like, oh man, they're showing me a lot of shots and I can't quite process them, that usually means I don't have a great handle on the broadcast. Like I'm not in control of what's important. Like the broadcast slows down a lot when you are locked in on what's important. So that's I would say my main role in trying to put it together in a way that it doesn't like break the illusion of um, break the illusion that you're because they don't wait for each other. These guys and girls are usually throwing at the same time. So it's my
Yeah.
job to kind of piece it together in real time. So like for I think a great example is like just because it's the last tournament we did was Worlds. Uh uh Sully Tippy had the throw in on
Yeah.
14 and you could hear the cheers while we were teeing off on the at the tee of 14. So like my job is like, okay, Sully Tippy just threw in, how are we going to present this to the viewer after we're done with the tee shots? So, or there's lots of options. Or we could just go right away. Like as soon as Sully Tippy throws in, hey, put it in replay channel A. We're going to do this now. I know there's one more player to tee, but we're going to do it now. Usually we are patient and we just wait, and you figure out the timing that makes sense. But uh, you can do anything with the timing. We can kind of put things where we want to. A big goal of mine is always can I put things in a certain order so that it doesn't feel like, um, for example, I don't want Evelina to throw into a green and then say, hey, on that same green, here's a player putting. That wouldn't make sense. Even
Right.
though, right. So, like, this would happen a lot on hole 10 at the Worlds, because that green, um, they were usually on top of each other, the groups. So I have to clear that green before Evelina has throws her upshot, even though that might not have happened at that time. So like that's kind of I'm trying to make it so that it feels natural. And then the other big thing is the sponsors, like making sure that all the sponsor obligations are being taken care of. Uh,
I never would have thought. It does. You do a great job because it does feel natural. You don't ever see Evelina throw onto a green and then the next shot being Henna putting on that
on
green.
that same green, yeah.
I never, I genuinely never thought about that. But you have those shots in the can, and it's
Right,
when's the right time to show them.
exactly.
And do you have a goal on the number? We didn't finish. Okay, I have two side questions, but
Sure.
let's finish your day. Okay,
Oh, right.
now we know what you're trying to do. You're trying to show us the arc. You're trying to make sure there's no noticeable bumps. You're trying to minimize the number of errors that happen
Yes.
throughout this thing, where a replay gets played backwards, for example.
Hmm.
Um, but now we're done with the second broadcast. It's 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Or whatever time it is. What are you doing for the rest? You said then your day really starts.
Yeah. It used to be so much harder when I did not have as many people helping me out, and I'm so grateful that I have those people. Um, but so basically, I put together the rundowns for the next day. So I'll say, okay, like what was the biggest storyline from today? What was the biggest thing? If someone just tuned in to round four of Worlds, how do I catch them up from what happened in round three? So I put together like, okay, we're gonna need, and I keep using Evelina example because she won, but we're gonna need Evelina arrival. Which means the camera ops, when they get there, they're going to want to shoot Evelina like getting out of her car or whatever. We're going to need Evelina warming up so that we can then transition into an Evelina package of highlights that Connor and Blake put together, and then we're going to go to a graphic to put some numbers to the visual that you just saw. We call it tagging. Like tag the. I always try and tag a visual with some number. So or tag the, maybe it's just we just do the number and then you're tagging the number with the visual. Either way, and then we're going to go to the tee. After the tee shots, we're going to do this walk and talk, IDEO walk and talk, whatever. And I got to set up that walk and talk. I'll text the player, hey, Missy Gannon, would you mind doing this walk and talk with us? She'll say, sure. So putting all that together, I usually do it through from the start to when the lead card is like a hole in, is kind of how long
Yep.
it is scripted. And after that, we're kind of improvising because you can only script so much.
But
Um,
you actually do script that first, it's probably close to a half hour.
yeah. And I mean, it's not only that. Sometimes we'll say like, "Hey, I know I'm going to go to break on hole 8, so I need this on hole 8." Now we don't do that as often, but there's no limit. I actually script the end of show now as well, where we scripted like, okay, final putt. What are we doing after that? So that's kind of a new thing that we're doing.
So
Um,
you're on the call in the morning, 2 hours before you go
yeah,
live.
yeah.
And one of the things you're doing is telling the camera operators, go watch for when Evelina pulls up so we can get her getting out of her car.
Exactly.
That
And
camera guy doesn't just happen to be there. He's told to be there.
correct. Yes. Yeah, and Ian is really on top of that stuff. So the kind of delineation of duties, I would say, is like I'm in charge of scripting all that out, and then Ian's in charge of executing it. That's kind of
Okay.
a really good way to think about the producer director breakdown of role. Like we're uh like we need to be in lockstep. It's a two-person job basically. So I'm thinking like what's going to happen in four things, and then Ian's thinking about like how do I execute the thing that Mahmoud is thinking about in four things. But he's in
Okay.
like he's kind of more in real time, and uh I'm kind of more like looking ahead. So honestly, one of the biggest issues, like one of the biggest mistakes that like what something that creates a lot of mistakes is I'll say, hey, we're gonna do this, like, hey, prepare this, hey, we're gonna do this, and they're like, oh, right now, and it's like, no, not right now. Like I'm thinking like two things ahead, and sometimes there's miscommunication there. That's why I have to be very very clear, like prep this thing, or hey, we're gonna do that after this thing. Like it's very clear that I have to be very clear that I'm telling them, uh, and that's where I sometimes run into trouble, is where like you, because sometimes things are happening in real time as you're doing them, so it's going to be like, hey, we're going to go replay channel A, replay channel B, and then while we're in replay channel B, it'll be, hey, this thing is happening right now on camera 4, put it in replay channel A. So this is like in real time, like
Right.
5 seconds. It's a matter of seconds. Like if Marky's a second late and Ian's a second late, all of a sudden we can't do the thing on A because now they're showing up on camera 1, 2, and 3. And sometimes it'll be like, hey, just still go to A. We're gonna be late there. We're gonna put what's happening right now in 1, 2, and 3 in B. And so it's just kind of like you're just talking constantly for like 4 hours. It's just it's extremely stressful. But it's fun. It's fun. Like you wouldn't do it if it wasn't like, I love sports. It's like my favorite thing in the world when someone does something really cool, and it's like, okay, how can I present that to the viewer at home in such a way that makes it like even more interesting or whatever.
Now, I
So
know that during the MVP Open,
mhm.
after any particular day, I have no clue who's winning. And
Yes.
I can ask my brother, who just filmed the lead card, who's winning. And he says, I don't have any idea. I saw somebody throw it in on 14, but I don't know who's
Yeah.
winning. Do you? Oh, you have to know who's
We
winning.
have to. Yeah.
That's literally your job.
Yeah, and you'd be shocked how easy it is to lose track of it on
Correct.
even where we're sitting. So I have three screens. one screen on my left where I just have the leaderboard, and I have two leaderboards. I have one that's sorted by who's winning, and I have one that's sorted by card, because that's actually a lot easier to pick up. Like, oh, this person maybe isn't playing well, but they just birdied from 60 feet. I still want to show that. So that's why the live scoring is so important. Like, it's very hard to pay attention to that many people at once. So, I mean, even think when you play a tournament, when people are like, what did you get after the hole? And you have a hard time remembering your own score, let alone someone else's. Like, imagine trying to do that for like 12 people. So anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I have that going on my left screen. On my main screen, I have my multi-view, which has uh preview, program. Those are the two big boxes. Then I have I'm like pointing at it like it's on my screen. But then I have 7 cameras across the middle. I have replay A channel, replay B channel, replay C channel. I have my assets, assets, graphics, booth, and there's like 2 other ones that I'm forgetting at the moment. But oh, whole 18 camera, yeah.
Wait, I apologize. When you said you have 7 cameras across the bottom, those are live cameras.
Exactly. So I have 7 live cameras,
And then you
I
have 3 replay slots.
yes, which are
And then
loaded
you
up with different
have
things. Yeah.
assets,
Which
like
is like
packages,
exactly.
and then you have the booth.
And I have yeah, so I can see if Nate says like, if I say something, hey Charlie, did you hear me say that? And Charlie can just give me a thumbs up quick.
So
So
that's just a dozen little boxes there.
yeah, it's something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm sure I'm missing something. Same thing with graphics. Like I can ask our graphic operator, whether that's Juan or RC, uh, I can say, hey, show me this graphic just to make sure that you have the right one that I'm thinking of. That's why
Wait,
slugging. Oh, sorry.
the drone.
Oh, yeah, the drone is usually camera 7. So,
Oh,
uh,
okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah. But yeah,
Um,
it's all fun. It's fun stuff. So yeah. Anyway,
so the one interesting thing, you were talking about showing a shot and then showing another shot and then trying to be 4 steps ahead. And
yes.
when we're watching DGN or YouTube on the first day or two, and we see shot after shot after shot, we can know in our minds, the people listening to this podcast know Mahmoud's a little behind right now. He's frazzled because we're just seeing shot, 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 and
Well,
he can't quite keep up. Is that
no,
accurate?
no, no, no. That's actually sometimes I. That's how we want it to be. That's how I want it to be. I want it to be fast paced, but like not not chaotic. There's like a fine
Okay.
line.
Yeah.
Shot is great. That's actually what we want. We want it to just be like, here's golf, here's golf, here's golf. We want it to be a constant stream of golf. And I personally, there's different philosophies on how to produce. I had a lot of great mentors and producers at ESPN that I really looked up to. And one of my favorite producers, his name was Danny Corrales. His big thing was like, the show's not about you. It's not, or by you, I mean the producer. It's not about like, because some producers will be like, well, I prepared this segment and I look how smart I am. Like, I want to show you, like, look at this
Right.
smart thing I prepared. And Danny's big thing was like, it's not about the thing I prepared. It's about what makes sense in that moment for the viewer. So, like sometimes it's really easy to be like, well, Isaac just birdied 3 in a row or 4 in a row, whatever. Let's go crazy and do this Isaac thing, like do this Isaac package. And it's like, well, yeah, but this person over here also like birdied a bunch of holes, and like just trying to balance out. It's a fine balance between uh celebrating certain things that are happening, drawing viewers' attention to something that's happening versus getting out of the way and letting the players do what they're doing. Uh, so in the final round, it's much more important to be like, hey, Isaac just birdied 4 in a row. He has a 5-shot lead. Like, pay attention to that.
Yeah.
In the first round, it's much more important to just be like, Ricky Wysocki just did this. Paul McBeth just did this. Missy Gannon just did this. Paige Pierce. Like, we want to show people their favorite players as much as we can, while still being kind of narrative driven. We can't show everything. It's, I think one of the pieces of criticism or feedback that I see is like, well, why don't they show me every single shot? Um, I, and theoretically we could, I suppose, but even in theory, if we could, I don't know that it would make for pleasant viewing. It would just be like almost too much, and we'd have to cut them so tight that you wouldn't get to like you wouldn't get to understand
Right.
what happened each shot. So we try and give appropriate pad on the front and back side of each shot where it feels like, okay, I see the shot, I understand what they're trying to do. The shot ends, and I have a feeling of like, okay, completion to that shot. We want the commentators to have enough time to talk about each shot. So it's not just about like shot, 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 shot. Yeah, I mean, if we were doing that, I honestly think it would be less enjoyable. And
Yeah.
know, yeah.
It, if I was gonna err one way or another, and I personally would say show less shots.
So if you, yeah, yeah,
Give give them, and in general you do a great job of this, but giving the shots time to breathe.
exactly.
Um, I'm watching a live sporting event. I I don't I don't take this the wrong way. I don't mind when Gannon Burr takes 35 seconds
Yeah,
to it's a circle two putt. It's very important. Every time he's trying to get ready, while he's getting ready, the tension is building. And there's a reason that he's taking that time because that shot matters. I think you guys do a really good job of giving the shots time to breathe.
yeah. It's certainly a balancing act, and uh, we don't get it perfect all the time. You know, we're doing our best, I promise. Like, I think it's one of the one of the hardest things. Like, people make these comments, and it's so mean, and it's like, I promise we're trying so hard. Like, it's not for
Wait.
lack of effort.
Oh
Uh,
my, you said
it,
you have 5 people in the booth
right.
or
So yeah,
on the production team. And you're not even all in the same room.
no, no, no. We've never. I actually haven't even met our graphics operator. He lives in Colombia actually, and we have our other graphics operators in Finland. But so yeah, we have director, producer, our AD, our associate director who plays out the assets is also our A1 or like audio um, person who's just keeping track of all the audio levels and channels and whatnot. And then we have our replay operator, Marky, who's also like a tape producer essentially. Uh, and then we have our graphics
So
Visop. So,
you
yeah.
guys are not able to, after the round, go out and have a beer together and
No,
laugh and joy and
I
feel positive about what you've done. But I wish to goodness you could do that.
I almost honestly I almost wouldn't want to. Like when you're no offense like it's just like when you're talking to these people nonstop for
Yeah.
like the last thing I want to do is no offense man, I love all the people I work with, but like it's just the last thing I want to do is talk to anybody. I like sometimes I'll go to my parents' house after like a long weekend and my mom will try talking to me and I'm just like just please for the love of God just like give me like 30 minutes of no one talking. Like
Yeah.
I can't have word talking. Like it's just voices in your head the whole time, and it's because you have to separate out the commentators are in your ear. You hear the commentators the whole time, just like the viewer at home.
Yeah.
Plus, you hear all the people in the control room talking. We're talking constantly, so it's just lots and lots of voices in your head, and yeah. So yeah,
Do
it's
you
fun
ever,
though.
so you have the commentators going, and
Mhm.
then you're watching 12 cameras and you're talking to each other constantly.
Yes.
Uh, do you ever hear the commentator say something that's maybe not correct or maybe you didn't aren't going to do, and then you say, "Oh, crap, we have a little fire right now." Does that kind of
Exactly.
thing happen?
No, yeah, that'll happen from time to time. I think we've told our commentators like, please don't do that. So
Well,
sometimes,
of course, it's just a human error. I'm not,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Sometimes our commentators will ask for a certain replay, and we maybe don't have it at the moment, but we're pretty good at getting queued up. One of the things that I need to get better, well, not need to get better at, but like one of the things that like I don't need to get better at is appropriate. One of the things I would like to get better at is a lot of the times we're just marking shots for because we know we're showing all the Eagle shots, for example, because the Eagle's playing well. And again, I'm
Yeah.
thinking just final round of Worlds. And we don't necessarily look at every shot. Sometimes we just mark it because I know I'm going to show this Eagle shot, so we mark it. Now at the Worlds in particular, uh, we might not have time to show every single thing. So like sometimes we'll just show the shot that is like the more appealing, the more visually appealing of the two. So you'll notice this happens a lot at World at like bigger events in the final round. Like the drive is just the drive. I think 3 was a perfect example at Worlds where the drive is like pretty straightforward. Okay, we don't necessarily need to see that, but the upshot where it lands by the basket, I do need to see that. So we might just skip to the second shot. Something that we make the mistake of doing sometimes, we made this mistake literally on hole 8 at Worlds. And I was kicking I watch back every broadcast, so I try and pick up the mistakes. But like this was a mistake we made. Eagle threw a crazy drive on hole 8, and his upshot was pretty, perfunctory, whatever. And uh,
Oh, yeah. I remember
and
the shot.
yeah. So his upshot was pretty simple, and we're in that mode where like I need to get through this eagle shot because the action on the lead card is very exciting, and eagle's not ultimately is not relevant to the
Right.
conversation who's going to win. So, um, so I need to okay. So we don't have time to show the tee shot because they're approaching the eighth tee. Like I said, I don't want to show a tee shot and then here's these guys teeing off on the eighth. It doesn't really make sense. So I'll tell Marky, hey, let's just go to the second. Here's the upshot, and then we'll show the upshot. He's 5 feet away. He's going to make birdie there, and then Nate will say, oh wow, that was a huge drive for that to be his upshot. And I'll be like, dang it, like we didn't pay enough attention real
Right.
time to notice that drive. We missed that. That's something we miss. That's like if we miss something, that's usually it. It's like a big drive on a big open hole, which from the when you're looking at the cameras, it doesn't look that impressive. But like the commentators will notice that the upshot is quite short.
Yeah.
So like what we'll do there sometimes is we'll be like, here's the tapped in for birdie, and then we'll go back. Let's do like here's a replay of the drive that got him
Right.
there. So that's how we kind of work around it. That's what we did, I think, at on hole 8. But
So
yeah,
that leads me to one of the questions I have written down. Do you keep track of errors? Do you have a
I do.
number of errors that you know you made, and you want to try to over time bring that down to some reasonable number?
Yeah. So I don't know where my notebook is, but I have a notebook in front of me during every show, mostly for keeping track of ads. But I also have two columns. I call one column making TV, and I call one column just like mistakes. Now the making TV column, I'll put anything there where I'm like, oh, we did something cool. Like that was like a cool moment, cool segment, great job. And I'll put like stuff in the mistakes column when it's like an obvious mistake. Like I wouldn't call that eagle thing like a mistake. That's just like
Right.
that's more just like no one at home is affected by it. It's just like it's not like we like had a camera dip like that I would call a mistake
Okay.
or it's not like we used the wrong wipe or something. It's just simply maybe it's not as artistic as we would have liked it, but it's not like out. So I keep track of those things. Uh, you know, we notice a lot more than what the folks at home notice, and we're pretty particular. So I would say, in a given broadcast, or somewhere between I don't know 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, like in that number of mistakes. Where it's like there's no the person at home noticed. That's where I define it as a mistake. Um, so uh, yeah, there's no specific number, but
But
yeah,
the short answer is yes, you keep track of them,
yeah.
and yes, you I don't know if you review that, but then the goal is to minimize that. That's one
Yeah,
of the things.
exactly. Yeah. And I mean, we'll talk about it with folks. I usually talk about it with Ian. He's kind of like I said earlier, he's in charge of like in real time execution. So those, me and Ian will talk not after every round necessarily, but most rounds, me and him will kind of review what happened. Um, so yeah,
So
it's a very hard gig. I have I always tell everyone that I work with in the control room in particular, like I'm never gonna be hard on you on a mistake you make in real time, because it's very hard. Like sometimes you just push the wrong button. Sometimes like I
right.
can't be too critical of that. What I can be critical of is your process and your preparation and your focus. So if there's a lack of those things, then we have to have a conversation. But like if it's just like, oh man, yeah, I just hit the wrong button, or I marked this in too early. I do that all the time. Ian's actually gotten on me about that, where I'll mark an in uh, on a replay too early, and then like the camera op wasn't quite set up yet. So like they'll
Oh,
move
okay.
again to get into a slightly better
Yeah.
position. And I didn't see that because I just saw them set up the first time. So I'll mark the in and then they'll move again. So like those are like those small little things that we try and eliminate. But um,
So I have two first of all, thank you very much for taking the time.
I
And
love this is my favorite thing to talk about. I love TV.
you
It's like honestly very fun.
you segued into my final two questions perfectly with that, and I'll just go in the order that I wrote them. Um, Earlier you were talking about someone made a package. I don't remember who it was, but someone like did something great. It was Luke Taylor did
Yeah,
something great, and you made a package, but then Nicholas had the roll away, and it doesn't make sense to celebrate Luke Taylor's great shots while we're all feeling this pit.
yes,
And so they went out of their way. They created this package, and it never got shown. Does
correct.
that happen? Does that happen much? Does that happen very little?
I would,
What's the deal with those?
yeah, it's probably like in somewhere around 75% of the stuff doesn't get shown, I would say. I can
Does not get shown.
does not get shown. I can even pull it up for you right now. So round one of Worlds, this is the list of packages that were built. Kristen wins two-time Worlds. We showed that one obviously. Kristen struggles at the majors. Kristen sweeps the majors. Generic good owned the season. Generic good Holland the season. Generic good owned the season we never used because owned didn't play well at Worlds. Silva Saarinen dominates the Euro Tour. We didn't show that this
So,
weekend. Yeah.
Mahmoud, this I try to keep these under 3 hours, so I'm going to cut you off
Yeah,
on the
but
list of. But
yeah,
so you're going over a list of packages there, and you've got X, and you used 0.25x.
something like that. Yeah.
Does anybody
Yeah.
get upset and say that package was awesome?
uh, I try and tell folks at the beginning of the year, and it's really hard. It's really hard. You never want to waste someone's effort. Um, but it's like I said earlier, it's not about us. It's not about us
Right.
producing the thing. It's about the folks at home and what makes sense for them. And I'm never gonna as a as the producer, that's kind of my responsibility to decide what makes sense and what doesn't. And I'm never gonna put something in because someone spent a lot of time on it. As much as I would like to, like
Right.
um, it's just we have to think about what makes sense most to the viewer at home. And in that moment, Lou Taylor, I think even threw in on 14 the final day too. It's just like literally the next moment was Nicholas. So it's just like
Yeah.
I was literally setting up as Luke Taylor threw in. I was like, okay, guys, here's what we're gonna set up after the hole. This is while Nicholas is like getting ready to putt. We're gonna walk off Luke Taylor, then we're gonna go to assets with the package, and then Nicholas. And I was like, okay, scratch that plan. Now we're gonna set up the and then we're prepping the Nicholas replay. So that's how fast it happens. Yeah,
I hope our listeners and viewers get to have a deeper sense of what it is they're watching and knowing when something dramatic happens that shifts the scores on the leaderboard, that breaks somebody's heart, that knocks somebody out of the tournament, that there's a crew of five people sitting in all over the world
right.
who Mahmoud is now saying, okay, we got to do a whole bunch of different things right now. And
Exactly.
they're not scrambling, they're doing their jobs.
Yes.
But there's just a lot of reacting going on that we don't see, but we do enjoy. So I will
Yeah.
say that. And I want to close my final question to you. And I want to celebrate these five people.
Okay.
You've mentioned Ian, you mentioned Gary, you did mention the other people. I don't remember all their names.
Yeah.
Number one, I'd like to know all their names and what they do. But number two, I'd like to know you've got five people. Sometimes I watch the PGA. So let's
Uh-oh.
pretend I'm watching the Masters.
Sure.
How many people do they have doing these
Oh
five
gosh.
jobs?
Um,
Doing the jobs of these five people?
it would be hard to even know what their setup looks like, but I would, I'm honestly not sure. It would be hard for me to guess. Probably like in the neighborhood of, I'm gonna underestimate just to be like positive that I'm right.
Oh, no, no. Let's overestimate. Let's have fun with it. We're all
Uh,
friends here.
I would say at the very bare minimum, it's 20, and at the maximum, it's like 80 to 90. Because like they're doing so many different broadcasts. They do 4 or 5 broadcasts at once. So
Okay.
I would say on their main broadcast show, I would be shocked if it's fewer than 20.
Okay.
But because like most of the time, all these roles are split up into multiple roles, right? Like
Right.
all the roles that we are doing are usually split out. Like I was saying, like the director, usually there's a technical director and the director. So Ian's doing two of those. I'm doing producer. I'm doing producer, uh, tape producer, and replay operator. Usually that's three different people. Marky is a tape producer and a replay operator, so that's two different people right there. David is the AD and the A1, so that's two different people right there. And then our graphics is actually the only person I think that is doing one job. But they're usually graphics is split up into multiple roles. You have your graphics producer, and you have you have your operator, your graphics operator, who is literally like hitting push play on the button, versus there's a person usually setting up the graphic and a person
Right.
playing out the graphic. So, uh, yeah, I think between Ian, Marky, David, myself, uh, our Caitlin comes in every once in a while. We have RC who's in Finland, and we have Juan who's in Colombia. And that, shout out to Gary for finding those folks all across the world. That's one of the cool things about our cloud setup, where I think we're about as cutting edge as you can get with that. I think other companies are going to start moving in our direction, where you don't have a physical control room, you have people kind of spread out like this. Because it's so much more efficient. We actually tried, me and Ian went to the USDGC to do a show in person, and it was so much worse than being remote. Because like when I'm remote, I can set everything up exactly how I need it, and there's no one talking to me, and it's just like it's very focused. Whereas when you're on site in a truck, now you miss that energy, obviously, but this is how we found to be the most efficient.
Mahmoud, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us. And
Yeah.
even more, thank you very much for sharing your significant skills with disc golf. You mentioned that you started with ESPN and you did a lot of stuff there, and then you moved into this role, and disc golf is better for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's very sweet of you. Yeah, I'm learning every day. I think I've learned more doing this gig because we're doing it from the bottom. You know what I mean? Like we're building it together. We're building this thing that we don't, every time we learn something, every week I feel like we make some new innovation. Whereas at ESPN, that was never the case. I'm more impressed, honestly, by a resume of someone who, like when someone says like I worked at CNN, ESPN, and name another big company, Fox. I'm actually like less impressed by that, because I know from my own experience that if you're working at those big companies, you probably were not in charge of very much. Whereas here, like if any one of us is off for a game, it's like very obvious because there's so few of us. So yeah.
So we will need to do this again, because I forgot to ask you anything about the future, but perhaps the off season is a good time to do that, and we can talk about the things we're going to look forward to. I look forward to having another conversation with you again.
Love it. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you all for watching. That does it for us today on Disc Golf Daily. If you have any thoughts, news, or opinions, shoot us an email, discgolfdaily@aol.com. Have fun, throw them straight, tell a friend about Disc Golf Daily, and hit the thin gap. All right, and we're done. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. It really does help us grow.